Welcome to the Flexible Philosophy Podcast, where we explore psychology, religion, and philosophy in everyday life. We are both therapists, but we're not your therapist. This show is just for conversation, learning, and fun. It's not professional advice or therapy. If you need support for your own situation, please reach out to a professional therapist. We are so glad you're here. Let's kick it off. Hello, we're back. We thought we would follow up last week's conversation about faith shelf breaking moments.
I think one time that you and I talked, like, early on in our friendship, didn't you describe as, like, a physical sensation when that happened? You
Yeah,
lost
my analogy for that would be it feels like I was standing in a football stadium and like all the lights went out. It did feel like time froze. It was like someone came in and said like there's aliens on Mars. It was that. And then you're like your mind freezes for a minute and you're trying to process like what you just heard and you're like, "What?"
It was like 9/11.
Yes.
This the world stood still. It was kind of like a break, and nothing else mattered in that moment.
Yes,
Mhm.
except that happened on the inside. Instead of
Yeah.
at 11, you're getting the input from the outside. I just had the thought, I don't believe any of this is true, and I think that religion is man-made.
Mhm. And
So,
then you're still surrounded by people that are, like, moving forward with their own stuff or, like, expectations of you and everything, and you're, like, having this huge 9/11 moment on the inside.
yeah, that's, like, such a good thing to know because from the outside, business as usual, kids are getting up from a nap in 30 minutes, but from the inside, you're, like, having this enormous existential crisis,
Mm,
like, earth-shattering crisis.
yeah.
Yeah.
So isolating. You
It
you said it's a doozy. That sounds really lonely and isolating when so much of your community depends on your participation in the community.
Yeah, and
You
then
might be losing
suddenly
it all.
you're the bad guy all of a sudden because what you just thought in your head means that you are like a backslidden, like horrible, like dissenter to the one and only true meaning making thing you ever thought was real or good. So you've suddenly, without wanting to, shifted categories into like the bad guy in the story.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the bad guy.
Yeah, I was in this program once. There were, like, I wanna say 6 of us or something in the room, and there was this moment at the beginning of our program where they're like, "Look to your left, look to your right. Statistically, 2 of you aren't even gonna be Christian in 10 years." And all of us were like, "Who is it? Who is it? Who is it?"
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's like, how come, like, when it's so polarizing in that way of like, "Well, it's not me," and then there's, like, moments in the New Testament where it's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna walk away," you have, like, years and years of these teachings of, like,
Yeah.
the people that walk away, or the people that have these thoughts or something like that, they're a stumbling block or they're like there's tons and tons of illustrations of what it is. So it's like, "Oh, that's me now?" And it's kind of like a huge identity shift. So you're not only experiencing the loss and the grief of a community, you're experiencing this radical change in identity of, "Oh, was I doing this all along?" Or depending on, like, your theological orientation of Calvinism or Arminianism, blah, 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 if you know anything about that, there's this question of, like, "Oh, was I always one of the lost? And was I kind of, like, playing a role?" And that can really mess with you psychologically. Like, "Alright, so what's
Mhm.
all this mean throughout the years if I'm having this moment now?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I'm so passionate about helping people dealing with it.
That's why, like, there's therapists that specialize in this type of thing or that understand where people are coming from. Because if you can just imagine that of like what an identity shift it is, we're trying to reconstruct a philosophical belief system and
Yeah.
not having the tools to do that. You can see
Yeah.
why it would be years potentially.
And and then the pressure from your if you're married, like, then you gotta deal with it with your spouse, if you're a parent with your kids, if you're a child or a brother or a sister with your extended family, with your friends, with your Bible study. I mean, if you're into that system, it's every single relationship you interact with is probably gonna be affected by that shift. in a profound
Th
way.
Yes, then there's the people who their livelihood and their paycheck depends on their participation in the community. So,
Yep.
you have pastors, they have bachelor's degree in Christian ministry. Shout out to those of us. Joke's on you. Just kidding. You have, like, bachelor's in ministry, master's in divinity, and that's your whole professional background thus far, So,
Oh,
there's also the question of, "All right, this feels very high stakes. If I were to walk away, am I hireable?" So, there's
yeah.
some people that are, like, closeted, having these thoughts, having issues and stuff like that, but in order for them to keep providing for their family, they're still kind of, like, mentally out, physically in. That's when you get
Yeah.
that type of situation. Mhm.
It's so many layers. I can't even fathom having to do that if I was a pastor. Like, that would be incredibly hard.
Yeah. I mean, so you can see how threatening the cognitive dissonance is to where it's like to protect my livelihood and to make sure my kids are fed, I'm just gonna act like none of that's happening. Or it's like you might have some stuff to put on the shelf. It's like, I'm not going to though. Don't give it any weight. That's Satan's voice or whatever.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
It is hard.
Mhm.
What are
Okay.
your thoughts about other moments? So we've, like, said why that one is so monumental, but what other moments have you experienced where you, like, changed your mind about something you didn't think you would change your mind about?
Let's say LGBT affirming category, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, depending on what community you grow up in, you read the Bible through this lens of like when it's talking about, you know, unsightly lifestyles or whatever, you think gay people. That's like, it's kind of like this population that's so easy to put the magnifying glass on or the spotlight of like, yeah, that's about them. I had this class when I was in seminary. I went to a seminary for my counseling degree, and we had this class called human sexuality. And this professor was great. My seminary was actually like pretty liberal in many senses, and I feel like I got a good counseling education from it, despite it being a seminary. But in this class, the professor brought in a guest speaker who was a trans person. And I don't remember prior to that having spoken to a trans person before.
Mhm.
And just listening to this person and their heart and how they are living their life and what gender affirming medical care has done for them, like on the positive and everything like that, I was just like, all people deserve human rights and these people deserve to exist. Like, who am I to say that that identity isn't a real thing? You know?
Yeah.
So we had that guest speaker, and this, I look back now that that's been years. I look back and I'm like, I can't believe you volunteered to sit in a circle of 20 of us who know nothing about gender affirming medical care, who know nothing about appropriate language to ask someone. And
Yeah.
for our professor and the person, like they had given consent for this, but like ask any question you want. Some of the questions, I look back, I'm like, that was cringe. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like telling a group of like fundamentalist seminary students, like, ask whatever you want. It was so awkward.
Wow.
And this person, so much grace in the world, answered all of our questions about genitals, about surgery. And it's like, so, person in my class, so hold on. You mean to tell me that
Yeah.
you inject yourself to look like that? But I like,
Yeah.
I am indebted to that person. I can't even tell you what their name was or anything, but I am indebted to them for putting themselves in that moment of vulnerability for the sake of our learning. Then I looked at the statistics from the Trevor Project. Those numbers do not lie. Like be having a safe adult or having an affirming adult in an LGBTQ adolescent's life is
Mhm.
literally life preserving. Like
Mhm.
I didn't know the importance of that. Then I had a friend from high school who, sent me this Facebook message, like, after everyone graduated, and, like, Aleesa, you're so religious. You're probably never going to want to talk to me again. I'm really even nervous to tell you, but I'm gay.
Wow.
And I was like, is that what I'm putting out there? Of
Yeah.
like, you're so religious and you're going to hate me now? Like, I was like, is that the energy that I'm putting out into society that I'm so unaccepting? So all those moments went on the shelf. Then I read Stranger at the Gate by Mel White. That book changed my life. It
Yeah.
completely changed the way I see people. It changed the way I see the LGBTQ community, especially fundamentalist Christians who are gay.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, that book was life-changing. I've recommended it to so many people. Actually, on Mel White's website, you can listen to the audio version for free.
Oh,
So
cool.
after this podcast, if you wanna listen to a different voice, yeah, that book changed my life. First of all, little background on Mel White. He was Billy Graham's ghostwriter throughout the '80s when televangelism was really gaining speed. Mel White was big into TV and production for those types of religious figures that you would see on the 700 Club or when you're homesick from school, like, you get these random televangelists on TV. But he was big in those circles and stuff, but he was gay and closeted and struggling with that. He tried every type of therapy you could imagine, and this book is just like his memoir of the
Yeah.
struggle and wrestling with scripture, trying to figure out like, can I be gay and Christian at the same time? And so that book was a big deal for me. And so, years later, that's a huge part of my counseling practice is providing a safe space for a population that needs it and that has been attacked, unfortunately, so much by the government, by political movements and activism, which I hate calling it activism when it's on the wrong side of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are my turning points, definitely.
Was there any time at which you remember like vocalizing out loud to someone, like, I've changed my mind about this, or how you describe it as a process and there's all these points of and shifting, but was there a moment or do you not even know because it just happened so slowly?
Yeah, there were a few moments, and unfortunately, they ended up being like tough conversations.
You.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
So I have been in some circles that consider themselves to be affirming and stuff like that. But the conversations that I have had were me like calling out a church because the pastor would say, "Oh, yeah, I'm cool with gay people, but would you marry them?" No. Like, would you allow them to have their wedding in your guys' church building? No. And
Yeah.
so I tend to like create a little cognitive dissonance wherever I go. Like just
Just
sprinkle it.
sprinkle it in.
Yeah. And so I've had
Well,
conversations like that, but it's like, well, if that's what you're looking for, I'm not sure if we're for you.
that's so
Yeah. But
interesting.
I've had conversations with pastors about ethics and stuff like that. And like I said, that population gets name dropped. It comes up for every illustration, it seems like. So when it does come up, it's like, and there's all these verses and stuff like that. I'm like, "Oh, have you read the book Unclobbered?" And it's like, "No,
Yeah.
that's not from our side." It's really
Okay.
disheartening when I have had those conversations. So, and
Yeah, it's
then they're
really
like,
hard.
"Lisa, you're not even gay." Like, why do you care? I care about human rights. Like, it all boils down to that.
That's your MO. So it
Yep.
sounds like your mind was sort of changing, but then it came to a head in an outward way, having a conversation with a pastor or somebody who was not affirming when you were like, "Well, I'm not you," like saying to them.
Yeah, this is really important to me, you know? And maybe I didn't have the urgency of it as like when a parent's child comes out and then the parent's like, "Oh, no, now what? Like, what do I do?" And it kinda, like, creates this sense of urgency or something like that.
Yeah,
Hopefully an urgency to affirm the child's
or to
identities,
leave
but
this religion.
yeah, but for me, I didn't have so much of a sense of urgency as, like, "Dang, I don't wanna be coming off as this negative person that's gonna reject people or write people off or anything like that." Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was able to I mean, as just an ally, I was able to take it at some sort of speed that I could, like, synthesize all the information.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, me having these conversations with my husband, luckily, he wasn't like, "Well, then you're a
Yeah.
vessel of wrath," or something like that, like, both of us have evolved in that area for the most part to where we're on the same page with it.
Yeah.
I don't I don't have that urgency.
It's the same, like it's interesting because 'cause you're saying, like, my faith shelf-breaking moment happened, but then I never left the church for that reason, I left for the same reason you're saying. Like,
Mhm,
I sat in churches for almost a decade after I decided I didn't believe it was true because I was like, maybe it's worth sitting here. It was like a tradition, it was comforting, I thought my kids were benefiting. And then but it wasn't like I walked out of church because I was like, "This is objectively untrue, this is a made up story." I walked out of churches because it was affirming,
mhm,
and
yeah,
I decided I was never gonna go back to a community that was gonna treat people the way they were being treated.
yeah. I was thinking that was a straw that broke the camel's back, but it's heavier than a straw, like, that's a big deal, like, when they're starting to have those conversations and stuff like that, and you realize how detrimental being affirming can be to the youth
Yeah,
at large and stuff. You're in the church because you think your kids are gonna benefit from it, but in all reality, you're like, "Oh, what if this is actually not a safe community for my kids?" Or they end up in that type of situation, like I was
yeah,
saying about the paycheck of, like, so much rides on me being a certain way and me
mm.
having these connections right on that. So I'm going to just closet aspects of my identities to continue on with that. And it's going to do more harm than good for sure.
Yeah, talk about a matrix moment because for me in that beginning, I was like, "I'm gonna harm my kids, like, what is gonna happen to my kids?" Because they're not gonna have exposure to this religious truth.
Mhm.
Like, I thought my faith changing was gonna hurt them, and I was so worried about that. I'm all so far on the other side that I'm like, I do not want my kids exposed to that religious rhetoric because it's
Yeah.
come so far.
Yeah.
I've come so far in 10 years, and even that last little bit has been, like, almost in the last 2 years where I would be like, "Yeah, like, you go to youth group or whatever," and now I'm like, if it's not an affirming youth group, my kids are not allowed to go. I don't wanna put them in a position that's, like, not helpful with their peers, but I really sat with that and I was like, "No, because that's not safe for your gay friends, or your friends with gay parents." Like, if that place isn't a safe emotional space for them to be in, I am not, like, letting you go.
We visited this church a few years ago and they had all the books of the Bible written on popsicle sticks. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. 66 popsicle sticks. Anyways, it's like, so we walked in to drop my daughter off in the kids' room, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna make up a super biblical name. Oh, little Esther's over there putting the names of the Bible in order on the popsicle sticks. Do you want to help her?" And my daughter's like, "I don't do any of this. Like, what? What's lamb on chance?" And it's just like, I felt like a failure to a certain extent in that moment because I'm like, "Oh, my daughter doesn't know the songs, that you use to memorize that." Or it's like, "Oh, we're
Yeah,
gonna we're gonna play this game about the 10 commandments and stuff." And it's like, or those, oh gosh, the Awana draw your sword. You're like find the Bible verse really fast. Like so many games that
yeah.
I killed. Like I was a champion.
I was very good at them.
I bet. We were Bible scholars, but I was just like, "Oh my gosh, like my daughter doesn't know these things," or like, we're kind of like, am I putting my kid in the situation where they're feeling left out and stuff like that? Yeah, it's just like I know what that's like to be asking yourself like, "Oh, could my kids potentially be benefiting from this because like her participating in that and memorizing all that stuff that I did, it would
Yeah,
mirror so many aspects of my childhood that were pretty good?"
yeah.
Um but we're not in that
I
anymore,
know.
and it was kind of jarring for her to be like, "The books of the Bible? Like, what?" It was just like, yeah, kinda
I
weird.
know. My
Yeah,
youngest doesn't know any Bible stories really, not
mm,
really unless he's just picked him up, but my oldest went to VBS and did all of that.
yeah.
In my family, there's a break between what child has what exposure to church, which is so interesting.
Ooh, we'll see what happens to
I
them.
know. And that is really hard too because the youth group is really fun. Like, I had a
Mhm.
fun time and I built really good community, but it's just like and I've explained this to my kids, it's the terms and conditions. It's like they do such a good job of, like, glossing it over with, like, shiny programming and fun events, but, like, they are heavily indoctrinating those kids at the same time,
Mhm.
heavily.
Yeah.
And, like, it's just it's so slow and, like, the drip is so slow that they don't know it's happening, but what is happening is so erosive and corrosive to their self-image and their belief about the world and other people that I'm like, it's just not worth the cost of like, we can find fun in Boy Scouts or sports or like go camping as a family then. Like, my kids are fine. They're thriving. They're making friends. Actually, all my kids, most of them are in travel sports. Oh my gosh. All my kids, a lot of my kids are in travel soccer. And I often think to myself, like, because I have this conversation in my own head, like, am I harming my kids that they're not in youth group? And then, like, instead, we're on the soccer field on a Saturday and a Sunday, and they're with a group of kids and they're having fun and they're traveling. And I've been thinking, like, see, this is what people do in the secular world instead of church. And this is how their kids are connected, blah, blah, blah. They're also learning healthy, like, team physical fitness skills. Last week, a mom from the team texted us that the entire team said the Lord's Prayer before the game and like huddled up, and it's now their like team tradition, and how proud she was of the boys and what good kids they were. And I was just like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Take the kids out of
Like,
church, but you can't take the church out of the South.
yeah. Our school system sends out these flyers and stuff like that, and they're all from churches and like, "Oh, we're gonna have this worship service on the football fields," and stuff like that. It's just like, yeah, it's still in it, and if you complain about it, then you're, like, blacklisted.
Yeah.
Like, "Oh, is that an appropriate use of public funded facilities?"
Yeah.
So, they don't
It's
wanna.
not. I also know parents who, like, will go sit with their kids in, like, even an evangelical service, and they'll, like, participate, and then afterwards, they'll be like, "Hey, what did you think about that? Did you notice anything that you just disagreed with?" And, like, they'll hash out, like, critical thinking, which is an interesting, like, mix because then you're not depriving them of the experience, but you're, like, at least adding on nuance to, "Hey, this person acts like an like, absolute authority figure, but, like, this is just their opinion about religion. It's not, like, the only way to think about it." And I think that there's some, like, perks to doing it that way too. What are you doing on Sundays? Gardening?
Well, we work at a homeless shelter. We go on and off between my husband and I. So after the homeless shelter, I'm super tired because you have to wake up at like 4 in the morning to go to that. These
Wow.
eat breakfast at like 5:45 in the morning
It's
that they have.
really early.
Also eat dinner at like 3 p.m. so all the people can like get in line at the shelters and like find a place to sleep. So it's all done strategically like that, but they're eating breakfast so early in the morning. So anyways, I'm always tired after that, and then lately I've been going to the gym to practice for a competition on Sundays. So like that might be my community. Like I go there with friends and we practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know. I get a lot of satisfaction out of Sundays cuz just like, you know, you
Yeah.
can be what you want.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Alright.